Okay. That's all right. No computer. Yeah, no worries. Okay. Okay. Oh, still everything. Sure why. Everything is.
Not me.
It's me. Right here. So weird. So do you speak what you read? I call it legal there, because I mean, you can see.
No.
Right.
I don't have an trigger.
I don't know.
That's true. It's true. It doesn't make it back. That is right. It's a ring handle. I don't bet on ring. I don't bet. I bet, not on trigger.
I don't have some. Right. Yeah.
Never done. I did it, I wanted one car. It was very since fringe, but I haven't done since. Sort of, which one is it?
So I think we're gonna wait until we can resolve these tech issues. Okay, but we're still live. I know, yeah. Can we go now live? Or yes? Here it is. It's all good. Right. Oh, you can go live. Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, super. Okay. All right, so now getting started. All right, so this is Friday, May 9th, and it's Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and we are coming back to Mr. Groff with Fish and Wildlife, joining us remotely. Welcome. Oh, you can share a screen. Can you?
Thank you. I did hear that.
Yeah.
I can share my screen right now. I will.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, we'd love to see your presentation.
Okay. Is that working for you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I will start. Good morning. Thank you for having me back. And again, I apologize for any difficulties on Wednesday. For the record, my name is Luke Groff, and I'm a herpetologist with Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department and the Agency of Natural Resources. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about House Bill 23, which in part aims to advance protections for our state's reptiles and amphibians. Excuse me. So the first thing I'd like to do is just start with a definition. So I'll use this word herp a lot today. It's a term that's short for herpetofauna, which is a term that encompasses all of our reptile and amphibian species. So here in Vermont, our reptile and amphibian taxa are, we have 1 lizard, 7 turtles, we have snakes, those are our reptiles, and then we have salamanders and frogs, which are our amphibians. Here in Vermont, we have 40 native herp species, including 19 reptile species and 21 amphibian species. 10 or 53% of our reptiles are designated as special concern, threatened, or endangered. And 6 of our amphibian species, or 29%, are designated as special concern or endangered. These are our 8 threatened and endangered reptiles and amphibians in Vermont. You probably heard some of these names before, but I just want to take a moment and put faces with the names. So the Fowler's toad is a rare frog here in Vermont. We know of 1 population down in southeastern Vermont. The boreal chorus frog hasn't been detected in the state since the late 1990s. We believe it may be extirpated or locally extinct in the state. The spotted turtle is our rarest turtle, only 3 populations known across the entire state. Common 5-lined skink, it's our only lizard species. It's only a handful of populations are known in western Rutland County and southwestern Addison County. Timber rattlesnake is our only venomous snake species, only 2 populations known in western Rutland County. And then our threatened species are the spiny softshell, which is a almost entirely aquatic turtle restricted to northern Lake Champlain and some major tributaries. North American racer, 1 population known down in southwestern Vermont, and the eastern rat snake, restricted to Addison and Rutland counties. So moving on to why I think herps are unique. First of all, they're ectothermic, so their body temperature will always mirror the temperature of their environment. So with that comes some unique adaptations, like how they survive winter. Many of our species have delayed sexual maturity, so female timber rattlesnakes may not give birth here in Vermont at northern latitudes to 8, 9, 10, 11 years of age. Wood turtles may not give birth until 13 to 16 years of age. Some of our species have really low reproductive output. So spotted turtles and musk turtles up here in Vermont only lay 2 to 3 eggs a year. Some species have irregular birthing frequencies. So the timber rattlesnake, once it reaches up to 11 years of age and becomes sexually mature, the female timber rattlesnake will only reproduce in northern latitudes, only reproduce 3 to 5 times, every 3 to 5 years. So it's not an annual thing. Across our species, they're characteristically high egg, larvae, and juvenile mortality. So very few eggs make it to juvenile stage and very few juveniles make it to adulthood. Most of our species are slow moving. Think of the turtle, its poster child, low mobility. Many species have specific habitat requirements, so they're not found ubiquitously across the landscape. And then a lot of our species have long lifespans. So like I said, many of our species take a while to reach sexual maturity, and they're supposed to make up for this by living a long life. Timber rattlesnakes, 45 to 50 years in the wild. Spotted salamanders, 32 years in the wild. Spotted turtle, up to 110 years in the wild. So they're supposed to offset that late sexual maturity by living a long life. But because of roads, cars, illegal collectors, and some threats that I'll talk about, it's rare they live that long lifespan. So some potential consequences of these unique characteristics include small population sizes, age and sex skewed populations, high mortality from roads, cars, agricultural equipment, and then patchy distributions like across the landscape. So we said they have specific habitat requirements and low mobility. That results in these patchy distributions that may have limited population exchange between them, depending on the distance or the topography between them. And then ultimately you can have population declines and extirpations or local extinctions. So this graphic is one that's well known by herpetologists. It does a really good job of comparing the reproductive potential of, in this case, snapping turtles, black bears, and white-tailed deer. Snapping turtles at northern latitudes like Vermont typically reach sexual maturity around 17 years of age. Black bears, females, around 5 years of age, and white-tailed deer females around 1 year of age. And these data are from Ontario. They hold true for Vermont. They don't hold true for southeastern US, like Florida and Georgia, states down there. Snapping turtles can grow all year, eat all year. They grow faster. They reach sexual maturity earlier. So after 17 years, you have that original female snapping turtle who just laid her first clutch of eggs. Chances are that clutch of eggs will be eaten by predators on night 1 or 2. It's estimated that a female snapper may have to lay as many as 1,400 eggs before one embryo reaches sexual maturity. In those same 17 years, you have the original bear, 6 mature offspring, 18 immature offspring for 25 total bear. And for deer, you have the original deer, 628 mature offspring, 283 immature offspring for 912 total deer. So this doesn't account for mortality, but it does a really good job of conveying the reproductive potential. And we're using the snapping turtle. You can substitute the wood turtle or the northern map turtle or the spotted turtle or other late maturing turtle species, and the same basic principles hold true. Here are some threats facing our herps. Some are common to herps and some are common to other taxa and other species as well. The 2 in blue are ones I think are relatively unique to herps. Illegal collection and persecution. I'll touch on those quickly.
I don't know. I
I'm sorry. Was that a question? I missed that.
Oh, we were wondering if we lost you there for a second, but it sounds like you're there.
Okay.
We haven't heard about that slide.
You heard about this slide?
What, the previous one.
You heard about this one?
We did, yes.
Okay, great. Well, I was just moving on to some threats, talking about the 2 in blue that I think are unique to herps, and these are ones that I'll touch on really quickly. So one threat unique to herps, I believe, especially our turtles, is illegal collection. So turtles are commonly collected in the wild and they're sold in overseas markets. They're sold for food, jewelry, medicinal reasons, cultural, religious reasons. They're sold as status symbols for pets. And the rarer species is, and the more uniquely patterned an individual is, the more valuable it'll be. So this group, CCITT, the Collaborative to Combat the Illegal Trade in Turtles, it's a relatively recent group comprised of state and federal biologists and state and federal law enforcement individuals. I'm part of this group, and our mission is to advance efforts to better understand, prevent, and eliminate the illegal collection and trade of North American turtles. So this graphic on the right is a CCITT produced graphic. You can see, just crazy numbers: 722 box turtles, 3,500 turtles, 915 box turtles, almost 6,000 loggerhead turtles, 1,500 turtles, 1,000, 4,000, 3,500. So this is just a 5-year span between 2018 and 2022. It's not all large-scale confiscation events. It's not any small-scale confiscation events. So this is literally just the tip of the iceberg. And if you're thinking you don't see Vermont on here, maybe it doesn't happen here. Sad to say, it does happen here. A Chinese national was arrested last year in Vermont by Border Patrol agents. She was smuggling 29 box turtles from Vermont into Canada by way of paddling them across Lake Wallace. She was arrested. She admitted to illegally collecting them from New Jersey, and she was ordered to pay $8,500 in fines and restitutions. She spent 5.5 months in jail too. So I'm glad there was some punishment, but if she would have been successful in smuggling those turtles back to China, she would have made way more than $8,500 in fines and restitution, or $8,500. So in my opinion, I think we need to do a better job of matching our punishments with the potential rewards for illegal collection. And then the other threat I want to touch on is just fear and persecution. So From an early age, we've all been taught to be afraid of snakes. They're mean, they're dangerous, to stay away from them. And I get it. Snakes are different than many other species. They don't have legs, they don't have eyelids, they don't blink, they move differently. This is one of the reasons I think they're so cool. But it's important to understand that very few of our species are venomous. We have one venomous species here in Vermont, only two small populations in the corner of one county. And I would rather have healthy populations of snakes around than mice in my house and pests in my garden. Another example of needless persecution is using turtles for target practice. So this does happen in Vermont. It's legal to shoot turtles with a hunting license. There's no closed seasons on turtles. There's no limits on the number of turtles you can take. There's no requirements to use the turtle or recover it. But fortunately, House Bill 230 aims to end this practice. So here are some considerations that we put together for House Bill 230. Hannah's in the room, can speak to these. I can speak to some, but happy to take any questions you have on what I've presented so far.
Okay.
No questions, but thanks.
You bet.
Super. So, thank you for that. This is very helpful. And it is really good to be able to put a face to the name, as you said. And gosh, knowing that gosh, the reproductive rates are so low means they're just in so much more more at risk, I suppose, if there's illegal collecting happening. So a couple of questions for you. So and this actually may be a question for Ms. Smith as well. So we talked about the pond sliders yesterday as potential, so the date for the cutoff for legally acquiring the pond sliders being July 1st, 2025. And we were thinking about the issue of pet stores potentially having these in stock. And then if July 1st comes and goes, the risk of them being released into the wild. I wonder if either of you have any thoughts on how to remedy that.
Thank you. This is Hannah Smith. I did reach out to Luke and Roz through also with the Wildlife Diversity Program, and we had a back and forth. And Luke, I think it might be helpful to hear some of the ideas that you had discussed related to outreach and the way a later date might allow the department to do some outreach to pet owners before this ban goes into effect.
Sure. Thanks, Hannah. So I chair the department's Wildlife Importation Possession Group. That's the group that is in charge of identifying which species are allowed and not allowed in Vermont. The pond slider has been one we've been on our radar for a while that we wanted to restrict. It's just the most common species in the pet trade. There's probably many people in the state currently own sliders, which is the reason we are seeking this ability to allow them to keep those sliders. But if we enact that July 1st date, that just does not give us time to outreach to the pet shops. So, sliders are found in every pet shop in the state, I presume. It's the most common species. So banning the species on July 1st just wouldn't give us opportunity to outreach. We have to identify all the pet shops. We have to find contact information. We have to, inform them of the new law. I just don't know if that can happen in such a quick time span. And then, when they are made aware of the new change, what happens to the sliders they have? We have to provide some opportunity for them, because the last thing we want is for people to release these sliders into the wild.
So you think just having a later date might be sufficient?
I do. I think, if we had the winter, winter is usually when we tackle things like this, because the summer is dedicated field work.
Sure,
so if we had the winter to do this, I think that would be very helpful. And
okay. And so forgive me, were you suggesting July 1st of 26?
That would work for me. I don't know what others think, but I think the July 26th would be a much better date than July 1st, 2025.
Yes, go ahead, you have a question.
Is seems to me like we'll be dealing with a two-part issue, because the first is we don't want pet store owners to buy any more. And then the second step is to get time to sell what they have without this themselves. We probably wanna figure out how to make the import, ban the import on July the 25, for instance, on passage, whatever, July 25. And then give 1 year for the disposal of what's part the proper disposal, not the right term, selling. Those that are already in possession.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm just wondering how that messaging is going to get conveyed to the pet shops before July 1st. That's my one question.
Yes,
So if the possession, is that possession gonna be illegal?
as acquiring is the language, I believe.
Oh, okay,
And-
so,
It
So-
includes possess.
Oh, it includes possess.
okay, so if you sell it to somebody, then they'll illegally possess it.
I suppose
There's an
so.
exception for pets. There's an exception for those cactus pets.
Oh, okay,
And if they were acquired before a certain
Yeah.
date. Yeah, so if you already had a pet. Then you can presumably keep that pet, but yes.
I have a sense there's far fewer pet stores than there used to be. Is that true?
this is mine.
I can't think of one.
There aren't many,
There used to be one in Bennington. I
There's-
don't think there was any.
one in St. John.
There's one in Berlin.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can think about 3 or so in the Rutland area.
Okay.
Well, so if we were to have a special clause there for pet shops to say that pet shops will no longer keep them or acquire new turtles, pond sliders in their inventory. Do we have any way to enforce that or any visibility into who they are?
The department does, in order for the pet shops to acquire these, they need a license. They need to be a licensed pet dealer, so we do know who's licensed
Okay,
to acquire these, so we, yes,
okay.
we know who is legally obtaining them.
Okay, so we could theoretically have some cause to say, if you're a licensed pet dealer, that you can't acquire any new pond sliders after a certain date. I hear you, Mr. Groff, about getting the word out to them. I mean, if we can put that in the middle of the winter, so you have some time to get that word out. If it was like January 1st of 26 or so, yeah.
But send an email.
Yeah.
But I'm just,
Like I can find out pretty quickly.
I mean, I think what the fear is maybe I'm misunderstanding this, that a pet store purchases a turtle for sale. Doesn't sell it by a certain date and just like releases it into the wild, right? So why would we even put a end date on the sale?
An end date on the sale. Do you mean, yeah, go ahead.
You want an inventory exception. You wanna put a prohibition on sale or import for sale. But then you give them a certain amount of time to sell their existing stock. It's what you do for
Right.
many different programs. So you would put it out if you're concerned, Senator Beck, about maybe the sale of turtles isn't like a very high product, market. Maybe you give them more time to get rid of their inventory exception.
So if you put a date on there and somebody doesn't make the date, then they go out, right?
And you have done that. There are inventory exceptions that say, provided that you purchase the the good, the turtle prior to the date, and you can keep, and you have proof of that. And so there's no limitation as long as you have proof that you purchased
Before
before the.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the real issue of simplification, I think.
Yeah,
That's the, no, yeah.
I'm just sorry, so it's okay, we're talking about pond sliders.
I mean, I don't care if that person keeps it for 5 years, as long as they don't throw it out into the pond.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Okay, so it sounds like there's still some interest in that, and, Ms. Smith, were you, I don't know if you were able to get any language together yesterday, if not, that's okay, because I don't think we're gonna be voting this out today.
Okay,
So-
yeah, we had a conversation, didn't land on a date certain.
Okay.
Because we were debating what kind of outreach would be needed, but I can work on that and send some to you and Mike as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a vision of how we could do this with an inventory exception and a later date. I think that makes sense.
You might wanna put a separate retail obligation in. So it's very clear, so person. They're either a pet dealer or a commercial importer, right? Commercial license for import.
There's a specific pet dealer's license.
Right, but then there's a commercial dealer import license, isn't there? That's under the rules.
Yeah, I have to go back and.
The pet dealer is under Title 20.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I want to come back to see if there's any questions for Mr. Groff. Yes.
So you're clear what the retailer prohibition is, no, you cannot sell after the state or import or. Provided that you may sell all stock acquired before July 1, 2025, provided you can provide proof of acquisition of the stock prior to that date. We can do that in the EPR program, so.
Okay. Fair enough, a familiar type of language. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Groff? I do have one other question, so thinking about I believe it's section 6 in 230, which is about the herbs. Just to be clear, is your sense that the Fish and Wildlife Department needs this authority, or do they already have this authority to do this already? My guess is that since it's here, your sense is that the department does not already have this authority, but what is your thought on the prohibition on the taking of reptiles and amphibians?
So if I understand the question right, yeah, the reason that I think we're offering this is because right now, non-threatened there's no protection for non-threatened endangered reptiles and amphibians. They can be taken with a hunting license at any time, at any point, in any numbers, and the biology of these species just may not be able to support that. So as I understand it, section 6 here would give the department the ability to enforce intentional take, as well as craft rules to for a harvest, a harvest for S5 common abundant widespread species, if we wanted to. And the important part of that is, having reporting requirements, because right now there's no reporting requirements, so we don't know how many people are harvesting turtles or anything.
And S5 is common and abundant, and as the numbers get lower, like S4, it becomes more rare, like S1 would be like the most rare, is that right?
Exactly. So those threatened and endangered species I introduced you to, most of those are either S1 or S2 species.
Got you, okay. Okay, all right, any other thoughts or questions from Mr. Bob? Yes, go ahead.
Luke, I'm really sorry I missed your presentation. I had a little fire to put out.
Sure.
I'm especially sad I'm gonna watch it because I'm a huge turtle fan. And I'm just looking through your slides and I'm gonna send them to my kids who will be very excited about them. So thank you for all the work that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you saying
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna transition to talking about the language itself. There's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about together. We have Mr. O'Grady here with us. This is 231. That's okay. You have here. So this is a question. Is this edited from last time or is it the same?
It has 230 on it,
Oh, it does have 230.
should.
Okay.
Wait, oh, we have a new version.
Amazing.
Lovely, thank you.
Can I say something more?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, still on, listen, anyway, and we'll answer. Should we do something to make clear to the pet store owners that releasing them into the wild is illegal? Not that we can enforce it, because otherwise we can't, but to really have them understand that's not a good idea.
The bill as drafted has that language.
It does, okay,
Yes, so
okay.
it has a prohibition on releasing into the wild of pet side or retained as pet.
Okay, that's.
But what are
You're right.
to Senator Bongart's point though, is there a way that we could sort of more do public relations to people and say, hey, not just pet store owners, but parents with old turtles whose kids are now in college?
Yes, I think that Luke was talking about the group that he's a member of, and they would have develop a plan to do outreach to the public, to commercial importers, pet dealers. We don't have that plan fully fleshed out yet, but that's a really important element of this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the rule, when the language goes into effect, we don't want it to create panic.
Right.
We want there to be education and explanation of why it's important to not release them in the wild.
Well, and I also think that some well-meaning people might think it's the right thing to do. It's like, oh, we're letting this turtle free.
It's Free Willy.
It's Free Willy.
Yeah.
So well-meaning people might. I mean, not that they're. Yeah, well-meaning people might do the wrong thing. They don't know the information.
The department does a lot of outreach. We have press releases, we have social media campaigns, our website has information about pretty much all of the native species in Vermont. And so I think that we can certainly ramp up efforts around this particular prohibition as it is going into effect. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about an animal as, I mean, I know we have lots of wild animals that are invasive, worms or bees or whatnot, but I think it's a
turtle.
turtle.
I never would have thought of that, yeah.
And just as a question, this is a little bit of a side bar here, but thinking about the sale of things like Japanese knotweed or burning bush, are there prohibitions on the sale of those as invasive species?
Under Title VI, the Agency of Agriculture regulates importation of plants by nurseries. And there is a list of species that they are not allowed to allow for importation.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let's take a look at this new draft of 231. And I think as I said, I'm not anticipating voting this out today. I think there's a few more changes that we probably want to see that I'd love to chat about. So we'll turn it over to you.
So do you want me to just walk through the changes?
Yeah, just the changes. Yeah.
Okay, page 10 is when H 230 is added to 231. We'll see at the bottom of page 10 going on the page 11 is the commissioner's ability to designate Labor Day as a pre-mentored fishing weekend. Section 9 relates to the fees relates to fishing tournaments. Clarifying that the ones held on the Connecticut are not subject to the Vermont permit. And then clarifying that, contests can be run multiple days, but they must be consecutive to be considered a single event, and then on page 12, lines 12 through 17, changing the fee structure for tournaments based on the number of participants.
So this would. I guess it was already going to go to finance,
Yes,
so this,
yes.
just more reasons for it to go to finance, okay, yeah.
Moving on to section 10, this is increasing the fines for big game violations. And then, what I think is a great clarification, actually defining big game violation, moving it, the language relating to taking, possessing, etc. On lines 2 and 4, and actually fleshing out what all that means in page 13, lines 11 through 21. But there were so many questions yesterday in the House about the term intrastate related to import and sale and of endangered species, and it is an interstate violation.
What line are you looking at?
Yeah, it's not in this section,
Okay.
it's later on,
Okay,
but. So then on page 14, section 11, currently fish and wildlife violations except for a specified 8 are criminal violations. And the department is proposing that instead of there being a presumption that a violation is criminal, there's a presumption that it's civil unless certain criteria exist that would prevent it from being dealt with as civil. And so the first change that we made that begins on page 14, lines 6 and 7. So you currently see that the Vermont Criminal Division has exclusive jurisdiction over fish and wildlife violations, except for those in 4572, which is the section directly below. And those related to chapters 123 and 124. 123 is the Endangered Species Act, 124 is the Trade and Covered Animal Parks. Both of those programs are actually administered by the Secretary of Natural Resources, but she uses the department to enforce. But they are enforced through the Environmental Division under A&R's General Enforcement Authority, not through the Criminal Division. This is just a clarification of that.
right, I think I need to process that a little bit more, so. Vermont Criminal Division of Superior Court of exclusive jurisdiction over fish and wildlife. The exception of this, so by making these exceptions, this makes them civil and not criminal.
Well, then you, for chapters 123 and 124, they're already civil.
Okay,
But then you have to go down to 4572 to see what else would be civil.
okay,
Currently, minor fish and wildlife violations, there are 8 of them that are set out in the statute, 7 of them. And they are enforced by the Judicial Bureau. The Judicial Bureau is the court division that enforces civil violations. And so this adds on page 15 a new subdivision 8. Says except for big game offenses and under revocation offenses when you were hunting under your suspended license or revoked license. Any fish and wildlife violation, and that's defined in statute and not otherwise listed in this section, shall be charged as a minor violation, provided that the offender has no prior history, no evidence was seized in relation to the violation, criminal warrant is not used in relation to the violation, and there's no possibility of forfeiture. So that's the new universe of civil violations that the department thing, and it makes sense. If you need a criminal warrant, it shouldn't be a civil violation. If you're seizing stuff and going to court hearings about about your ability to get that back, or whether it's gonna be forfeited, that's probably not something that should go to civil. If you have a prior history, you probably shouldn't be dealt with as civil. And this kind of tracks how animal cruelty works for certain animal cruelty violations. You get a civil violation first, but if you keep doing it, then it's criminal. And so it's intended to I think have multiple intents, but relieve the burden in part on the criminal division, actually get more fish and wildlife violations prosecuted / enforced, because they just backlog at the criminal division, and also not give people a criminal violation when they really didn't know that they were committing a crime. When you abandon your tip-ups when you're ice fishing, is that really a crime? And so that is the kind of thing that I think the department is looking for this language.
Yes,
That makes sense, but these violations, if there's civil violations, are there still penalties, or are they?
Yeah, so the judicial bureau works when something is committed to the judicial bureau's jurisdiction. There's a 3-judge panel that comes together that looks at the violation, the nature of the violation. They set kind of a max penalty, and then they set a waiver penalty. So you get your violation, your ticket, and it's like a speeding ticket. You read the back of it, and you like, if you agree to pay this amount and waive your right to challenge, that will be what it will be like.
Okay, so there's still some kind of record of it.
Yeah.
So they know if there are repeat violations, so then it
Yes,
would
yeah.
bump up to criminal court. Got it, okay.
Should I move on?
yes.
So the next section, section 13, is the section related to reptiles and amphibians. This is the language: a person shall not intentionally take a reptile or an amphibian in the state unless authorized by whom it's adopted under subsection B of the section. Intentionally is highlighted because the department is asking to have it removed, and then to use enforcement discretion to determine whether or not to enforce the taking of a reptile or an amphibian.
Wondering if we leave intentionally in there, their argument is that it might not be as enforceable because somebody could just say, well, I wasn't doing it intentionally. But if we take it out, then that expands the enforcement discretion that is a little bit ambiguous. Can you tell us a little bit about like enforcement discretion?
Sure.
And yeah,
So,
how appropriate that is?
Just getting way up high. The General Assembly is the supreme lawmaking and policymaking body. You set the policy and the laws and statute, and where you delegate that authority to an administrative agency. The administrative agencies, they either exercise that delegated authority, or they, under the take care clause of the Constitution, they execute the laws of the state. They are, when they have prosecutorial or enforcement discretion, they are awarded discretion to make determinations about whether or not, on a case-by-case basis, a person should be subject to enforcement, considering the facts, the situation, etc., etc. In the past, several times in the past, The department has asserted that they are using enforcement discretion to determine that an entire category of people will not be subject to enforcement. Or that a certain provision in statute is not going to apply, even though statute says it can apply. And so what that does is it moves away from enforcement discretion, it moves away from the take care clause. And for example, it's illegal to take big game in the state without a license. And the department testified in the House that includes hitting a deer with your car. But they have determined that through their enforcement discretion that they are not going to enforce that violation. That is, first of all, that's not their authority. The authority was delegated to the board to determine when to, and how to authorize the taking of deer. Second, that's not a case-by-case application of the law. That's them creating an exemption to the taking provision without any authority to do so. And so they have usurped your supreme lawmaking and policymaking authority by doing that. And for them to say, oh, we're just going to continue to use our enforcement discretion, they're basically saying we're going to continue to adopt policies that A, we either don't have the authority to do or are too broad and not on a case-by-case basis that qualify as enforcement discretion.
So it sounds like it's a bigger problem and it's sort of categorically problematic.
Well, it's not the first time I've had to testify to this.
Yeah.
You have your spiel down.
It's one of the things that gets me a little hot. If I sound a little hot.
There's a question here, and then I want to come back.
Clarify, there are people out there that will go hit here with an old beat up vehicle
Mhm.
to get one. And typically, if you can prove damage to your vehicle, they'll give the deer to the person who hits it.
Then you're,
Right, but if you've got a reputation, and most of the wardens know the people with reputations, you say, nah, you know what, this is like the third time in a month you've done this, so with the same vehicle. You know, that's just an example. And then, they've gotta have some discretion, because if it's a criminal act, they need to go to the state attorney. I've been at 2 o'clock in the morning sitting in their living room trying to get a warrant.
Mhm.
So you gotta really make sure you got all your stuff together before you go, so the wardens have a tough job.
Yeah.
And that's proper enforcement discretion. That's like a case by case basis, like we decided based on these facts, based on the number of time a person has done this, that it is not something that was inadvertent or accidental, and they should be subject to enforcement. Or we've determined that it was accidental, and because of the situation and the testimony and the evidence, we're deciding not to enforce. And there's tons of cases out there about when an agency has a delegated authority, and they're exercising that delegated authority, and they can show on the record why they are not enforcing or why they are enforcing, that is not something that the judiciary really should get involved in. That is their discretion.
And typically the cases will, they're not that important on a scale of 1 to 10. As far as the criminal courts are concerned, so while those cases don't ever come.
So if you take out intentionally or any other standard, and you're allowing them to use their enforcement discretion, they can do what they've been doing and create these broad-based exemptions. Like, are they going to exempt children collecting frogs? Like, are they going to exempt golf courses applying pesticides that kill off significant populations of frogs? I don't know.
Right.
And you're basically saying, then do what you wanna do.
Mhm. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this was what I brought up yesterday with the colonel when he was here, was this sort of, you know, that it felt to me like what he was saying was. We being them, they get to decide and we don't, and I was like, no, we get to decide, but I do wonder what you think the argument yesterday about intent and trying to prove intent, and there's not intent intentionally used anywhere else in this section of the statutes, and
Well, that's not correct.
okay, well, that's why I wanted to hear what you had to say about that. That's what it was.
They always say that there's not, that intent is not a standard for fish and wildlife violation. And I can point out 4 or 5 of them, one of which is the jacking law. Or the use of what the light law.
Wait, what is that? Oh, the use of light law. Yeah, he mentioned that as an example of the one, I think he said it was 2 times it appears. So, okay, what?
So you have to look in all of part 4, and there are like 5 or 6 intent violations, and they're law enforcement officers. They have the ability to enforce all crimes. So it's well beyond part 4.
Mhm.
They have the ability to enforce any crime with an intent standard.
Mhm.
So if they're gonna be law enforcement officers, they need to know how to enforce intent crime.
Mhm.
And so I know it's harder,
Mhm.
but that's because you want it to be harder.
So the bottom line is if we leave the word intentionally in there, you don't think it's overly problematic for them to try to figure out how to do their job?
I think they think it's overly problematic for them. I think the question is for you, whether you think it's overly problematic.
And is it inconsistent with other parts of the statutes where we're not saying, like the example of hitting a deer where we're not
It
saying.
is inconsistent with
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was wondering, so that there's an intent kind of standard for herbivores, but, or whatever, frogs, herbafauna, but not for, big game.
That's
Or,
correct.
birds or whatever.
Except if you're gonna jack.
Right, okay.
So I am wondering if one solution might be, is that we're giving them some rulemaking authority about this? Because in section 13.
Yeah, if you move on to page 16, there's sub B, which gives them the authority to establish requirements. By rule for the following: collection or possession for commercial use, export or sale. Taking of reptiles or amphibians that have been classified as common, widespread and abundant. Stable or increasing populations. Taking of reptile or amphibian that due to population risk to other native species or risk to ecosystems has been identified as requiring reduction in population or under specified criteria. Taking collection or possession of a specified reptile or amphibian for scientific education or commercial, cultural, or certain purpose.
So what if we were to move the sentiment around intentionality to rulemaking? That way there's a robust process with lots of input in which they could develop some rules about how to determine when something was intentional or not.
I think that's possible, but that's, I think, more of a question for the department than for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you mean in terms of like whether or not that would be an appropriate question to determine by rule?
I think maybe what you're asking for is to determine by rule, like allowances or exemptions.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
And so instead of it saying intentional, you can say that the commissioner may establish Maybe even shall establish exemptions or categories of thinking that will not be subject to enforcement of the law. And in that situation, you delegated the authority for them to do it. They're not deciding on their own. And that is consistent with the Constitution as opposed to what they propose.
Right, and then we would have some clarity about if they want to exempt. You know, people running over frogs with their cars, they could say that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, you know, there'd be lots of.
Inadvertent, accidental, they could probably come up with a couple of different.
Right, because to Senator Williams' point, there are times when people intentionally
Yes.
hit animals.
Right.
It's really awful,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so but having some clarity about when you're gonna use that exemption or
Yeah.
not, and instead of just saying that they're gonna decide what the exemptions are, that we're gonna have a process to determine that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes, go
And
ahead.
then, in addition to best management practices, they could try and develop a standard operating procedure for these cases, you know, it's a criminal violation. They have to still go through a jury trial on cases, so,
Yeah,
and they don't want to stack an already overburdened system, but
right.
so they have to have their stuff together.
And to honor this language that came up from the House, I wonder if you'd say, including instances of, or how to deal with intent, or including,
Sure.
yeah, does that sound reasonable? And just for what it's worth, I mean, I'm thinking about this just in the context of herpetofauna, but I wonder if something like that might be appropriate too in determining, you know, having some rules around hitting a deer in your car. I mean, maybe we'd see how this goes and then just because it sounds like there may be some other situations where the categorical exemptions are happening that are perhaps beyond their authority, and so we can just lay it out. Just let's set it out and move on. But we can see how this goes.
yeah, I wonder if we might not want to tackle that quite
Yeah.
now, because we have not much time.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you mean the broad,
the broader.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree,
yeah,
I
I think
agree,
keeping
yeah.
it narrow to this category of animals.
Yeah. okay. Okay, thank you for digging into that.
Okay, so moving on. Page 17, section 14. This is the person shall not import, possess or sell in the state of Pond-Slider unless the cur was legally acquired as of that prior to July 1, 2025. And this all relates to your earlier testimony that a person is prohibited from releasing to the wild a Pond-Slider retained as a pet under the subsection. The violation shall be subject to enforcement as a fish and wildlife violation. And then sub A is repeal of the effective date of a rule adopted by the commissioner regulating re-import possession or sale of a Pond-Slider. And so that's the Pond-Slider sections. I don't know if you want to change anything there.
Did we want to have the
Yeah,
plastic bag exemption?
right,
I'm calling it that, but that was
the inventory exemption.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned a separate retail obligation.
Right, I'm just gonna, in sub A, I'm probably gonna just redraft that a little bit, and then have the inventory exception through.
What is the retail thing?
It's basically, it'll say person shall not import, possess, or sell in the state of Pond-Slider unless the turtle was legally acquired as a pet prior to July 1, 2025, provided that a licensed pet dealer or commercial dealer may continue to sell those acquired prior to July 1, 2025, provided they can demonstrate acquisition of the turtles prior to that.
Lots of prior in there.
Yeah, I'm just freestyle.
That's the idea.
Got it.
So there's no sell by.
No,
Okay.
that's what you want.
That's what I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
It's like that's an acquired by date.
but she's got the prohibited from releasing to the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Do
Yes.
we wanna have keeping in mind, I'm saying that's the point. We wanna have an ultimate sell by dates that can't go on forever, saying, oh, I've had this for 10 years. But I'm selling it.
Especially since Myrtle's live a long time.
Yeah,
That's up to you.
maybe 2 years from something like that,
Mm.
or 3, I don't even really care what the numbers are, so at some point. We'll pass any ability to sell.
I feel like that's something I would want to have more testimony on, just because then. If there's a sell by date and that comes and goes, but you still have inventory, then what do you do?
Yeah,
I'm trying to throw it out far enough.
So
back
far,
that would be-
right.
that couldn't be that.
And like, how long does a pet store usually hold, what's the turnover rate of turtles in a pet store? You know what I mean, like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I get the point, it's, I was just thinking, 10 years down the road. well,
Yeah, no, I think that's,
honestly, this is what I think will
Get
happen.
out of the table.
yeah,
Once July 1st hits. And they can no longer import. The value of those turtles goes up. And they'll get rid of them pretty quickly.
Mhm.
That's what I think will happen.
Anyway, it's not worth getting a couple of.
So if they ended up having some stock that was, beyond that date, would the department be in a position where the pet shop owner could call and say, hey, I've got these, nobody seems to be buying them, will you take care of it? Would they take care of the disposal of them or
Well, I mean, we have the authority to do that. I don't know how we would actually execute that,
I'm thinking as a pet shop owner that
right?
I found them to be on the date. I can't get rid of them, so what do I do?
Yeah, I
I
don't
know
have
we
a
have a
guy.
lot of pet turtles.
Right, get a lot of testimony.
I'm first.
Yes, yeah, we got all.
Just trying to, think of the gamesmanship here. We might actually want to make this effective on passage. Cause if this passes and you got till July 1st, like you might have people bringing like all kinds of these things. It's
oh,
I mean, you might just want to stay on that. I don't know.
That is always a consideration with an inventory exception, and you have done it both ways in the past. Sometimes you just roll the dice and say, let it be. And sometimes you even make the effective date prior, like go back to January 1, 2025. And so that's a policy consideration. Remember, you're making this July 1, 2025, you're gonna adjourn hopefully in May.
I sure hope so.
But then it has to get signed by the governor, and that can take more time than you think, because the governor's timing doesn't kick in until he or she comes to pick up the bill. And so we're talking June 15th before this gets signed,
So maybe it's just.
and you got 2 weeks for the.
So maybe. it doesn't
Import.
matter.
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
The subsection B. Repeals subsection A. Once there's rules. So what if the rules are totally different and are like, oh, let's have sliders back, like.
So ledge council is supposed to review all the rules for consistency with legislative intent. If they came out and said that they were going to allow the sale of all funnel sliders, I would. Assuming I'm the one that's still reviewing, which may not be the case, I would inform you all, the chair specifically. And then Elkhart could eject. If the department went forward over the objection, I think you would probably see legislative action on that one pretty quickly.
Yeah, it just, I know that whole thing hasn't gone well in the past, but I wonder why we need the rules if we're just saying in statute pretty clearly
you could strike that if you wanted to.
Was there a reason that it was?
Just to give the commissioners some flexibility and. Should they be allowed for import for science? Should they be allowed for import for education? Should, you know, is there a traveling turtle show for educational purposes? And she's like,
Okay.
So this,
Turtle service, oh gosh, okay, fair, I guess, I'm just, I just am sensitive to the rulemaking in this area, because none of these go as intended. Literally.
These are the rules of the commissioner, not the rules of the board.
Okay, that's a good point, I suppose, but.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
totally lost track. Why are pond spider turtles undesirable?
Well, because they're invasive. It's because they are adapted well to our climate,
Yeah.
but they end up pushing out the
Other
native
species.
species.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's the problem with like them
Okay.
being let go into the environment.
When so much food.
They're more,
Yeah,
Okay,
mm,
okay.
yeah,
where are they,
nothing against pond spiders.
Virginia.
Virginia? Stephen,
I mean, out in the
I
wild.
live in a small, yeah.
Okay, are we okay to keep going? Yes.
I mean, with climate change, they're gonna be up here and.
Yeah, it's true. Just a matter of time. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
Moving on to section 15, this is the amendment to the existing authority for the commissioner to authorize the import, transport, into transport, event transport through or possess of any large bird or animal, clarifying that includes reptiles or amphibians. And then on the next page 19, there had been a subsection related to gosh, there's one word. Sorry, I didn't see deprivation mode. Hannah, what did that subsection relate to?
There's a take collect, because I sell import export, not very freaking marks there.
And it's, and,
Like hubby section.
right,
Yeah.
and it was raising questions about unintended consequences. And scope and scale. And I believe it was potentially redundant for all those things where it was already, where the use was already authorized or prohibited. And so to avoid the dispute about it, the department is proposing to remove it, and it was removed.
Yeah, great. Susan?
So this highlight is just because
It's
to
just-
remind you that that was the, okay.
It's a new section E, because it was E before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then moving on to page 20. This is clarifying what can be enforced. This is where the interstate language comes in. Enforce a T&E violation, sell or offer for sale, interstate commerce, deliver, receive, carry, transport, or ship, threatened or endangered in interstate commerce, import, threatened or endangered species into or export of threatened or endangered species. And then section 17. The section 17 and 18 really relate together, and let's talk about section 18 before we do section 17. So when the secretary is going to authorize the incidental take of a threatened or endangered species, they are required to disclose certain information related to the location of that threatened or endangered species. And it goes to the owner of the land, potential buyers, qualified organizations, but it's also available during the regulatory process when that incidental take permit is issued. And the concern is that there are some certain species the location of which, if known to the general public, will provide an incentive for people to go and try and find them for collection or whatever purpose. And so the department already has the ability to maintain confidentiality of location of some, but they want it to be clear that during the regulatory process where you normally want things to be transparent and certain about location of things, that they have the ability to say, no, this is a situation, it's going to be confidential because of the potential threat to that T&E species. But they will have to have a subset list, page 24, line 13, that will provide those which will not be disclosed. The list shall be based on the rarity of the species, known collection and commercial trade activities, incidents of human caused mortality, and other factors that present a threat to the continued existence of the species. You heard me talk about the timber rattler and like whether or not if people knew where those were, if they would try to find them. Having walked across the entire bed of them in Pennsylvania one time, you don't need to find them.
You walked across a bed of snakes.
No, it's like the entire rock field, and there were like 400 of them.
Oh my God.
Sounds like Indiana Jones, like, yeah.
Yes.
Michael was so.
And the party I was with ran away
Oh, no.
and left 3 of us there in the middle of this rock field with timber rattlers. And we were like, we gotta stop.
Mark.
Wow. Oh, I did not know about it.
Anyway.
You all made it out alive.
One question about that, this, non-disclosing of where these locations are, it applies to the whole, I mean, we've been talking about reptiles and amphibians, this is not just applied to reptiles.
No, this is
This
threatened
is
endangered.
threatened teeny species, teeny species, yeah, and, okay, I mean, I'm thinking about that plant that just got this rediscovered last year that we
Which
thought was
is teeny.
It's teeny,
Oh, yeah.
and nobody knows where it is, and that's probably good, so,
Sure.
yeah, okay.
And so section 18, going back to section 17, section 17 is the authorized takings, incidental taking provision. There's just conforming amendments to reflect the fact that except for threatened and endangered species listed by the secretary in accordance with that confidentiality provision, that the information provided will be provided in notice, et cetera, during the regulatory process. So section 17 and 18 work together. And then section 19. This is a current provision in law that allows a farmer who doesn't post their land and who suffers damage by deer or bear to their crops, to their livestock, to receive compensation of up to or reimbursement of up to $5,000 per year for those damages. The department has always hated this, doesn't believe that this is an appropriate provision for their department, that it should be with agriculture and not with them. There used to not be a $5,000 cap on the reimbursement. There is no specific appropriation for this reimbursement, so it comes out of the Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund, and therefore takes away the use of those revenues for other department purposes. And they would just like to see it repeated.
Okay. There.
A lot of there were questions about whether committees of agriculture reviewed the language or not. There's a little kerfuffle on the floor in the House yesterday when a member of House Ag asked if it had to be reviewed by the Committee on Agriculture. They had to have a recess, so just if you know.
Thank you, I'll be in touch with our ag committee, yes.
So does this repeal this just from requiring Fish and Wildlife to do it, or just repeals it, period, like there's not another place in statute that this is. Like, it doesn't give it to the ag department agency and ask them to do it.
No, it doesn't give it just, there would no longer be this provision. And it was never intended as like a crop insurance, it's intended to encourage farmers not to post their land. And not to know about it, frankly.
Question here, yes.
So I had wildlife, deer damage to my crops and. They used to issue a permit for.
Well, that's different, and that remains the ability to take deer or bear doing damage, that remains, and that's unchanged. It's just that you will not be reimbursed for the damage that the deer or the bear did to your crops.
So I don't think the department had a problem. Confirming that there was damage, but they didn't want it coming out of fish and wildlife funding. And we didn't find a way to finance it. Other than, they don't, they just said, you wanna take the funding out of general fund or another place. I think that was the issue. You guys talk about that in finance?
No, this bill hasn't come to finance, but that would be an appropriations
Also,
issue, yeah.
It did go to appropriations in the House, I expect it will. In the Senate as well.
Okay, and that would be new because I think there's no other reason. I think what else is in here, if there would be any other reason.
I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
Finance won't have time to take this up next week. Then we're putting on all of this until we get finished.
Oh, okay. Exciting.
Yeah, maybe Friday.
Yeah, maybe Friday.
Okay. It's good to know. Okay, fair enough, to be continued then. Thank you, and based on our conversation today, sounds like we have a few more changes to make to this before we're ready. So just to name them, perhaps some rulemaking around exceptions for like in place of the intentionality line, some language about inventory exceptions for pond sliders. Think that was it. Are there any other flags people have? We took out that section E that was perhaps redundant. I think that's all I've got, unless someone else has more. Yes, go ahead.
What is this? Now I'm looking at is this 230 and 231 combined?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah.
But does it have everything from the other bill?
231.
Yeah, it doesn't, we didn't go through that. Does it have the fishing license for does it have?
Yes,
That's 32.
That's section 7. You'll see a commissioner, person without developmental disabilities.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
They receive a free permit. You will also have the commissioner maintaining an accounting of lost revenue. And reporting on that. And then at the effective dates, you'll see that the fishing license goes into effect on January 1, 2026.
Okay. And it has the other things from that bill. It has everything. Okay. Sorry, I missed that.
I think we went through the last time.
Oh, you did go through it today. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll look for a new draft. I think we can get you in early next week to roll this out. And then we're gonna move on to draft 319. So I need a second to transition here.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
What is it? I just noticed the word willfully. What is there just willfully and intentionally? Is this saying persons shall not? Right.
Yeah, and that's fishing wildlife violation.
Yeah,
What line are you on here? The
the first page, line 19. Has the
willfully
word
destroyed.
willfully, so that is similar to the word intentionally, so there is this standard in other parts of the statute.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's see how it goes with the herbs. Why else or potential?
So what are we doing now?
A new draft of 319.
Oh, man. Okay.
Just keeps getting bigger. And I'm also anticipating not voting this out today. I at one point hope to do that, but I don't think we will be doing it. But let's chat through the new parts of,
Changes,
yeah, yes, 319.
page 26. It's not a change. On page 26, line 18.
Which draft are we looking at?
Oh,
Draft
4.1, just
4.1,
gave it to
you
me.
just gave it to you.
I buried it already, sorry. Thank you.
So remember last time, we went through 319, we were looking at some changes requested by the, paint care, the EPR program for paint,
Okay, are you on?
page 26. And on line 18 of page 26, they had asked that it revert to post-consumer architectural paint instead of it saying paint products, which is the new scope of the program. And I didn't know why they wanted it to revert. There was an email from Allison Crowley, either last night or early this morning, which said,
Which I can forward on to Jude.
which basically said that they didn't need the convenience information determined here for post-consumer for paint products because they have the convenience standard on page 26, line 8 through 16. And I either don't understand that argument or I don't agree with it. I think maybe the rationale is because some of these paint products are more hazardous in nature, that they shouldn't be returned for collection at your retail store or just a general place of collection, and that they should be collected through the municipal infrastructure. But then you don't actually have the criteria for convenience that at least 90% of Vermont residents shall have a permanent collection site within a 15-mile radius. And one additional, that will all remain for architectural paint. And I guess that's a decision, that's a kind of a policy decision for you if you don't want those to apply to paint products.
So, I think I need a little bit more background.
I think you need chat in here.
Matt Chapman, yeah. Okay, I'm wondering, well, I'd like to flag this and have, it's probably come in to speak specifically to this, but, since we have your time right now, I wanna come back to this, cause I think, because we're walking through changes and there's other changes, and we'll come back, does that sound all right? Yes,
Okay.
yes, go ahead.
Allison Crowley for American Coders Association. I actually was just on the hallway speaking with them, with Paint Care, to talk about this very, so I wasn't quite sure when you were ready to get to it. I have someone on the phone that is in their office that could put right on speaker to speak to this, if that's, because there have been discussions between A&R and the A&R Paint Care about the collect convenience standards because there is an existing paint care program that deals with architectural paint. We will be expanding this stewardship organization to include added products. Some of those added products are considered household hazardous waste. And so we would be working with the Swimmies to have those household hazardous waste products collected under the existing system and with the existing convenience standards that are listed right before, I think it's section 4,
It's
just
not a
before.
standard, it just says that they need to work with municipal infrastructure.
So we would, that's what we would be doing, but I would be happy to have the paint care representative get on the phone.
Let's, cause we're not gonna be voting this out today.
Okay.
If we can, either schedule them for Tuesday
Sure.
or, get a written statement or something.
Sure.
About that, cause I think. Yeah, let's hold off on that for now.
Okay.
Okay? Yep. Thank you, and let's keep going.
Okay, the next, page 53. This is where you had in your previous draft of 319, the inventory report on salt storage. But in place of that, you are putting in the compromise on S29/H86 on commercial salt application. You will have that purpose section. The purpose of sections 28 to 32 establish the accepted standards of care for application of salt and salt alternatives. I'm just gonna focus in these sections on the really the kind of agreed on consensus. Because you don't need to go through the definitions, you've seen the definitions 40 times. So there's the definitions, there's the creation of the program. One of the key parts of it, the difference of the consensus is that on page 55, 15, and 16, the best financial practices are adopted by rule. It's clarified that the program is voluntary. The agency is offering it to commercial applicators. Then on page 58, you'll see the affirmative defense replaces the limited liability. This was the key part of the consensus agreement. Instead of the burden being on the plaintiff to overcome the liability protection, the burden is on the defendant to show that they have standard of care and qualified for the affirmative defense.
Okay.
And then the next major change or difference would be on page 61, section 29, getting a report on the salt and sand storage. You have in 29 the cover requirement. This is not a cover requirement. This is just an inventory. You have it applying to state, municipal, and private. This only applies to state and municipal. It was requested by ANR because they wanted to quantify the issue before going to a cover requirement. And you need more information.
Okay, right.
Right. Page 62, section 30. This is the municipal salt applicators. They get the affirmative defense that the commercial salt applicators receive if they complete the Vermont local roads curriculum and learn the BMPs and then meet all of the same standards that the commercial salt applicator meets, keeping the records, etc. And then
Yeah, oh, sorry, question here. Yeah.
I'm a little reluctant to ask you this question, but there was the whole conversation we had about immunity, the sovereign immunity for municipalities. They retain that, but this is specifically for the people who are
Right.
buying the salt.
yeah, so you will see on page 62, line 14, there's 24 VSA section, notwithstanding 24 VSA 901A. That is what waives the sovereign immunity for the municipal authority engaged in an act which might raise tort damages. This is saying that that waiver of sovereign immunity will not apply if they have the affirmative defense that's provided here if they qualify for.
Okay. So sovereign immunity is waived
So you're
for
municipal
municipal employees. And this is saying, well, we won't waive it
right,
as long as you use the.
For this situation.
For this specific, okay.
this is the issue that got me in trouble with the leader of, so.
That's why I was reluctant to ask you, but I thank you for clarifying it.
That makes sense, but it's also just good to know that references.
Yes.
Page 63, line 16, section 31. This is the fee report. I'm highlighting it because Ways and Means amended it specifically in the second and third sentence to be clear that any fee that's going to be charged, whether or not it's by the state or by a third-party vendor through a commercial salt applicator for completion of the program, it's going to be approved by the General Assembly. And then you had a creation of a position and $400,000 in appropriations for the position and for establishment of the program. That money is not in either appropriations bill to my knowledge. And so section 32, you asked that there be a contingency implementation. The duty of the agency to implement sections 28 chloride contamination reduction program. 29, and this is a question for you. Do you want that contingency to apply to the report on salt management? And then 30, the municipal salt applicators, the 30-moment fee report. The definitely 28, 30, and 31 should be contingent upon the funding, but 29, I don't know if they need that funding to do the report or not, and that's why I'm putting it out to.
My inclination is to not exempt that. I think we want that report to go forward. It's inventory,
Yeah.
so should be, and I think it's also prerequisite to any further work, so having that information sooner rather than later, I think would be good, and so that's my inclination, unless others have objections to them. Yeah.
Can I have a question? It says appropriation, this is session law, I would assume, like.
Yeah.
So if it says 26, but if there's an appropriation next year in 27, that would allow it to go forward.
Do you
right?
want me to say in fiscal years 2026 or 2027?
Well, I guess just ever, like, once they get the appropriated money, this should go
Okay.
into effect at,
Yeah,
in
in the future, yeah.
Sure.
I don't know if it matters because, but,
Right, like I think we're hoping that it'll be 26, but if it's not, I don't want it to be.
well, this is 26, it's not,
Right,
budget, so
right.
it's not gonna happen in
Yeah.
26, but it could happen in 27 or 28 or whatever, so.
Yep,
Okay, if I can do that. And I need on page 64, line 11 to change text 2005 to section 28, 30, and 30.
sorry, can you say that again?
So on page 64, line 11.
Yep.
It said the general fund for the specified purposes described in section 2 through 5.
Mhm.
That's not right, I just didn't change.
Oh, okay.
It should be 28, 30, and 30.
Right, yep, that's a good call. Okay. Okay,
And all the other language in 2, I mean, in the underlying 19 hasn't changed. So the battery program, the
right,
dam extensions, the other deadline extensions, the climate infrastructure, the climate super fund changes, all of that remains unchanged.
What is this status, Madam Chair, about the funding for the climate super fund in the budget agreement, do you know?
I believe that we may be hearing more about that from the conference committee soon, but the House did not have anything in there for the climate super fund, and ours had 700,000 My understanding is there may be some discussion about that, so we'll see.
And the position, did ours have a position for A R or not?
We did not include an attorney for A&R. Oh, so I did pitch that
Yeah.
in the other room, it did not
Okay,
get into our, so it's not, that's not in either version of the guide, unfortunately. But, the hope is to still be able to move the ball forward. So there we are. Okay. I'm gonna take a quick break, because we're
I think
We're
you're
done.
with me,
we're
right?
done with you.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions that I want to ask, then I might come back, and Ms. Crowley, I may want to go back to that section about paint and just try to wrap our heads around what is happening there, because I don't know about anybody else, but I'm still not feeling very clear about that, so if you don't mind, if we could do that, that'd be great. And yes.
Wouldn't have been Michael when that happens.
That would be, Michael, do you have to run away?
11 I have to run.
Okay, I'm gonna take a 2-minute break. And then we'll come back and we'll, talk Yes.
We are invited, that's supposed to be live, but not raising.
All right, now we're live. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. So, before we jump back to this section about paint, which is on page 26, there is one other issue that we may end up attaching in here. And Senator Beck, would you just, if you mind telling us like a little bit about
Yeah, just
that?
really,
Yeah.
so you don't take too much time. I think we'll have some more testimony on Tuesday, but the Brighton Power Plant, which is trying to make a fix so that they're capturing heat and becoming more energy efficient. Is having, not that, is having, with the tariffs and some of the equipment they were getting from Europe is having some difficulty. Their deadline is October 15th of 2025, and they're asking for a 1-year extension. That, if that's.
So we'll add it to the list of
Things,
extensions.
yeah.
This has come up, this is like a bad dream.
Oh.
This issue over and over and
It's
over
been
again, extension, and I'm not psyched about dealing with this again, let me say.
Okay, all right, fair enough. We'll hear more about it, next week. Okay,
Do you want language on that?
yes, and I think there may be some draft language, that may be suggested, so we'll, yes, that would be great, yeah. Okay, so jumping back to paint, which is on page 26. Since we don't have Ms. Crowley in the room, wondering if I'm gonna see if it's probably right there. Let's see. Oh, are you right there? Okay. If we could start with you talking about the paint and just tell us, or sorry, go ahead.
I thought you just said Tuesday.
Oh, so I wrote down the person.
Yeah,
Yes, that's fine.
okay.
So maybe what we can do,
Well,
yes, go ahead.
I can join if you want for just a.
Sure, that would be great.
I don't have a tremendous amount of background.
Okay.
Jesus.
Mhm.
So is Michael saying this? So right now there are two, Allison Crowley for the American Coatings Association. So what this 319 is doing is it is proposing to add to an existing paint stewardship program.
Mhm.
Which is administered under paint care. Right now, paint care is just collects architectural paint. Well, what's proposed in this bill is expanding that stewardship organization to collect paint related products such as stains and shellacs and other things that when you go into a paint store, you see on the shelves. Because some of those expanded products are also considered household hazardous waste. So right now, when you go to a paint store, you buy a gallon of paint. You can also return the unused paint to the retail location. But some of these expanded products are not suitable to be returned at a retail establishment. They need to go through the solid waste, the SWIMIES, as a household hazardous waste. So I think Michael might be able to help me out in this part of it. The solid waste organizations already have a system set up for household hazardous waste. I don't know off the top of my head the convenience standards or locations for those operations. But paint care would be working with the existing solid waste district programs for household hazardous waste to collect those products that are considered household hazardous waste, like paint thinners and whatnot, as opposed to bringing under the paint care umbrella. So that was the difference between these two, the differentiation between the two programs. So that's why did you get the email I sent you last night by any chance?
I did, but it doesn't answer the question if they want a convenience requirement for paint problems.
If they A&R,
Yes, no, but generally.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'd like to also just get Michael Grady's take on this sort of separately again, but anything else that you want to add about?
Well, I'm actually just getting a text, because I think they might be listening to me.
Okay,
It says, we are good with it as it's currently written, is my understanding.
okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you, and we can come back to this, and including hearing from Mr. Chapman, hopefully about it.
Oh, terrific. That would be
So, okay,
Thanks,
great,
Ruth.
thank you.
Take your time.
And Mr. Grady, any other thoughts you have about what this language is doing?
I was just trying to find some of the other programs that have hazardous or potentially hazardous products and how they're handled. I don't have that off the top of my head right now. But I could be prepared with that on Tuesday.
Okay. That would be great. Okay, so we'll. Sounds like we just need to. Wait for some more testimony on this. Okay. So I think with that, we've gone through all of the new parts of this, and that is it for the day.